Hello YouTube, it's Dr. Bass. Now that the boat is finally completed, I'm going to do a walk around video of my 1965 Starcraft 14-foot V-hull. I hope you enjoy. Alright, let's begin with the outboard. This is a 1983 Mercury 25 horsepower outboard. I should mention this boat was given me by an older gentleman who had it his entire life, and the outboard came with it. You can see my attempt to kind of restore it in the initial videos on this channel. It's run great. I think the only major problem I continue to run into, in addition to the things you'll see in the earlier videos, is I can't seem to get the carb cleaned correctly. I replaced all the gaskets and everything like that, and it still hasn't worked all the time. And the reason that's quite difficult with this particular outboard is the tiller handle. If you throttle it at all, for instance, if I need a little gas to start it up, it puts it into gear. So unlike other tillers that you can kind of rev the throttle up without engaging the gears, this doesn't do that. So you really need it to be able to idle, particularly if you're pulling into a dock. You need to put it in neutral and reverse and forward. So that can be quite frustrating. There are times where it works fine, other times where it doesn't. I've sort of tried everything. If you have any recommendations, let me know. Now, one of the questions I've gotten on YouTube since I've done the build out of the boat and put all the plywood in it and added a lot of weight to the frame, to the boat itself, is does it still run okay? It runs great. You can see in a video I've just done to give you an idea when it's just me on it, how quickly it gets up on plane. It goes about 25 miles per hour. Obviously, it would go faster without all this in it, but with myself and another person fishing it, it gets on plane very fast, and again, roughly about 25 miles per hour. I've had as many as 4 people on it. That's including myself. Not recommended unless you don't like the people. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start it for you. You can see that I've installed a kill switch here. That's actually quite easy. It was cheap online, and so I put that on just to be able to kill the engine without choking it, because if I'd have to choke it to kill it, it would be really hard to start if the engine hadn't sat for a while. So I've got the earmuffs hooked up to it. I'm going to go ahead and start it. Alright, next, just briefly, is the electric. I have a video explaining how I did all this. This is a 12-volt Optima battery. These things are incredible. They run forever. It's all I really needed for this boat. I put in those rocker switches. Also has a USB plug. Again, I explained this in other videos. What this runs is my trolling motor, which we'll talk about in a moment, my power pole that's in the back, which you probably saw earlier, the fish finder right there, and then a bilge pump in the back, and 2 navigation lights, one up front and one in the back. Alright everyone, this is my power pole here. This is a micro power pole. I think it's the smallest one you can buy. I got it used off of a friend. It's wireless, and for a boat this light, it feels like it's essential for bass fishing. What I did, you'll see in a previous video, is I've hardwired the plug, which is right here. And so whenever I'm ready to use this and I want power to it, I just simply undo that. I plug it in, and because it's already hardwired to the battery, I can see that it's on here. These things, again, are great. I don't know if I could fish without it now that I've sort of been spoiled using it. Down deep in the bowels of the boat, that is my bilge pump that I installed. I got it pretty cheap at Walmart. It's 800 gallons per hour, and it's plenty for a boat like this. Alright, next is my Minn Kota Edge 55-pound thrust trolling motor. You may have noticed it is a long shaft. That's not necessary for this boat, but I found it used and at a good price, and it was quite new, so I just went with it. It still works for the shallower waters that I fish in. Now, why 55 when you can go with a smaller motor for such a small boat? Well, I fish in a lot of submerged grass, so having that 55 pounds thrust actually is really helpful. When you have 2 people on the boat and you're in a lot of grass, if I need to turn this up, it will kind of get through anything. So it's really nice to have that. Also, having an old outboard in the back, you know, it's a peace of mind having having a trolling motor like this, if for any reason I got stranded. The only other thing I'll mention about this trolling motor is that it is also a 55, at least in the Minn Kota, is the strongest or the most pounds thrust you can have with 12 volts. And so that's what I was looking for. I didn't want to have two batteries because of weight, and these batteries are very expensive. So I was looking for the most power with only 12 volts. And with Minn Kota, it's the 55. But do check on that. They all have different ratings and voltages. Alright, next is my Garmin Striker 5 CV fish finder. I can't really say I've used it too much because I fish in such shallow water. I use it really just for temperatures for now, but I am moving, so I'm excited to use it in deeper waters and see how it works. The one thing this one doesn't have is maps, so if maps are something you need where you are going, you would have to get something a bit more expensive than this one. Alright, last but not least are my navigation lights. So I keep those under this side hatch here. There's one here which goes to the rear, and you can see the other one down in there, and I'll install them. Alright, to install the front navigation light, all you do is open that up there, drop that in. It's that simple. Alright, and then the rear, let's open that up. Drop that in, and this just sort of locks it in. There it is. Alright, let's start off with the trolling motor mount here. Originally, you'll see in the initial videos, this was white and it went straight across. There was no carpeting on it. This is actually still the same piece of plywood. It's actually the only piece of plywood in the boat that's not marine grade. I think it's 1/2 inch. The reason it's not marine grade is I was in a rush to put the trolling motor on here when I first got the boat so I could fish it, and this was before all the decking was in here. This was installed quite easily. I just you can see it in the video, but in the prior video, but we can't see in the prior video is that when I redid the deck, I made this cut on it to give me a bit of space. I keep my tackle box here while I'm fishing. The other thing I did this for was so that I could kind of hide the pedal away when I wasn't using it. So you can really easily just kind of get the pedal back out when it's time to fish, and when I'm done with it, I just sort of put it back in here and hide it away. So that's the trolling motor mount. This is secured by stainless steel screws. There are 2 here directly down into the boat, and then 3 on this side. Anything that's not answered or you don't see in this video, you can kind of see in the building process in the earlier videos. What I want to do now is just give a brief explanation of what I used, and if there's anything further that aren't in this, like details about specifically what hardware I use, just send me a note in the comments. So first off, for the framing, I used rough cut cedar. I was told by a lumberyard that cedar is naturally rot resistant and it's light but strong, and it turns out that seems to be the case so far. You'll see in the prior videos that I painted it using a marine grade paint. It's quite expensive, but I tried to seal all of it after I'd cut it and fit it in place, and then I went around it and actually sealed it with marine sealant on any edges to keep any water out of it, or any of the areas I put the sort of deck screwing in it, any screws that I ran into it, I tried to seal off as best as possible to prevent any water from getting into it. The next thing is the decking itself. The decking itself is made out of marine grade plywood, 1/2 inch. I probably would say after doing this again that you'll notice the framing itself, I probably went too heavy on the framing because I was worried about what the plywood can handle, and it turns out I probably have too thick a plywood and too much framing underneath it, but I thought maybe better safe than sorry. Another question with that has come up is, well, how much weight does that add? I don't actually know how much weight it adds. If I had to guess, maybe 150 or 200 pounds overall, which is a lot for a small boat like this. But what I want to do in the next video is actually show you how it handles when I'm fishing it, when it's just sitting still. What I found is that having more weight in it stabilizes a bigger engine. It's 25 horsepower when I'm running, and it's just me. And also when there's people fishing on it. The cool thing about this V-bow is in the back of it, it's quite flat. It really starts to taper in V right around this area. So majority of this is flat back here. So having added that weight kind of provides some extra stability to it, not only when I'm running through waves, but also when I'm standing up fishing. So, and then on top of that, I just got some cheap carpet. I know it's not necessarily recommended from a cheap like carpeting outfitter here, and it's outdoor carpet, and of course I glued it. You can see that in the videos, and that seemed to work really good as well. The last thing I'll do is talk a bit about the hardware and the latches and the seats. The hinges that I put on here, again, you can see all these builds in the previous videos, are aluminum. I had a lot of trouble finding what these are called piano hinges, something that's low profile like this. Aluminum and inexpensive. And Granger had these, and they've worked really well. You can see that they don't rust at all. The stainless steel piano hinges are just so expensive, so I ended up going with these, and they've held up really nicely so far. Then these little handles I put on here, again, you can see me installing them in previous videos. I probably would have used all of these. I just got these off of Amazon. They're really cheap, plastic. You just grab them and pick up. Some of these I put latches on like this. I don't think these are necessary. If you're, it's a bit of an overkill. But you can see that I put kind of the same hinges here because of the way I've cut these on the side. I could only put the hinge on the straight part. It works fine as long as you have, you know, support underneath here, so no one's stepping on this and going through. But there's a 2x4 or 2x2 that runs on every single seam here, so when you're stepping on it, it doesn't, you know, go through the floor. As long as you do that, you're safe. The seats, this I got used at a local boat store. And then the other two, I think I got from Bass Pro Shops. They were on sale, and they've worked really nice. The hardware for the seats, I think I got that online as well. I want to encourage anyone who's apprehensive to do this, that I came into this really knowing nothing about this. I researched a lot of videos, got a lot of great ideas from people on YouTube that do these sorts of things. I kind of sketched out a rough idea of what I wanted the deck to look like when it was all said and done, but until I actually started building it, I didn't really know how it would turn out. You have to kind of move slow and just kind of think everything through as you're moving through it. But if you're patient with it and kind of take your time and think things through as you're doing it, I'm really happy with the way that it turns out. It very comfortably fishes two people. It runs fine with two people on it. Fortunately, it didn't sink when I first put it back in the water. I was worried about the weight. All that works really well. One of the things that was a big question mark for me is how do I level the decking? What do I use as a measure for how the deck should be level? Should it run, you know, parallel with the gunnel, you know, or should it run parallel with the floor? It's one of the things I noticed right away. What I decided to do was just kind of trust the engineers that originally built this boat. What I did was I ran the deck parallel with all the old seats in it, so you can see these, and you'll see that in the video. So wherever the seat level was, I tried to keep that consistent all the way through. That means it's higher on the gunnel in the back. There's about 4 inches between the top of the gunnel and the deck, whereas up front there's almost probably 9 inches, 9 to 10 inches. Because what, again, I trust that if the engineers who originally designed the boat knew how to make the seats run a certain way, that I'd run that way. The other thing was this floor. I could have gotten more depth out of this floor if I put it lower on this end of it, the front end of it, but I figured it might as well run parallel with this deck. So I got as much depth as I could out of it in the back and then ran it parallel up here. So this is perfect, like rectangles all the way around here. So that's a little bit about how I did it. I just had to start somewhere, and you'll see in the videos that it's quite improvisational. I didn't really have a plan other than had rough sketches, and then as things came together, I kind of knew what kind of space I was working with, and then at that point, I'd kind of like frame in with 2x2s where I wanted, you know, the hatches to go and things like that. But again, I'm very happy with it. Next video, I'll take you out on the boat and show you how it fishes. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments for me about stuff that I use, issues I ran into. Thanks for watching.